Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Sarah, and today we're going to discuss how stress messes with your gut, the gut stress axis. See, stress affects everything instantaneously. When we're in fight and flight, our whole physiology and our psychology shifts, and that's to survive, right? So that's a good thing. We want to be alive. But once the stress is relieved and we're safe and sound, thankfully our bodies can enter into rest, rejuvenation, and recovery. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't get that respite. Stress is chronic in today's society, whether it be from the perception of stress, constant rumination over work or other emotional issues, or a legit experiencing danger like living in an unsafe environment. Stressful situations of these type where they don't stop, those can lead to physical and mental illnesses. Now, one area that is hit hard by stress is our gut. And unless you were born some sort of spiritually serene guru, which many people weren't, you've probably experienced firsthand how stress impacts your gastrointestinal tract. And that being said, you've probably experienced the reversed, right? So if your gut is misbehaving, you've probably noticed you're more irritable and stressed out. And this is because there's a relationship between stress and our gut, and it's bidirectional. So stress triggers GI issues, and GI issues trigger more stress. So it's a perpetual vicious cycle. So the cool thing is there's a lot that can be done. And they are so intricately related that they've used psychological treatments solely for gastrointestinal disorders. So we don't want to overlook the impact that stress and emotions have on our gut. It's important to understand this impact, especially if you've been struggling with chronic digestive issues and you can't get to the bottom of it and you feel like you've done everything right. So today in this video, again, on how stress impacts the gut, we're going to go over all the ins and outs of how that happens. We're going to talk about the nervous system and how it connects to the second brain in the gut. We're going to talk about this gut-brain connection, how stress influences the physiology of the gut. This is the gut stress axis. And specifically, we're going to dive into how stress impacts gut immunity, the microbiome, and intestinal permeability. Finally, I'm going to sum it all up for you and give you 2 quick tips on how to support a stressed out gut. So make sure you stick till the end. Now, in a follow-up video and article, I'm going to discuss more naturopathic and functional medicine modalities to support a stressed out gut. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. And all of the things that I'll be discussing in this video as far as references and research and additional resources, because I have free resources that will be available to you, as well as paid courses you can take if you want to learn more from me. Those will be in the video description. So scroll down and make sure you check those out as well. Okay, let's talk about your nervous system and your second brain in the gut. Now, physiological functions such as breathing, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your body temperature, those are regulated through the autonomic nervous system. These are functions that you don't really think about. They just kind of automatically happen, hence the autonomic nervous system. Now, the ANS, which is the abbreviation for the autonomic nervous system, has 2 divisions. There is the sympathetic nervous system, or the SNS, and that triggers the fight, freeze, or flight. So that's what revs us up. That's when stress happens, our sympathetic nervous system takes a hold of us and we experience stress and our whole body gets revved up. Now, the other end of that is the polar opposite. That's the parasympathetic nervous system. That's a PNS, and that calms us down. Now, both extend from the brain to all major organs, right? Because when you're stressed out, it's a whole body response. It's very rare that you're stressed and only one thing is affected, right? Now, the SNS and the PNS also interact with a third, less recognized component of the autonomic nervous system. And if you've been following me for a while, you probably know where it is and what it is. It's the enteric nervous system, or what's known as the second brain, and it's in the gut. And it's known as a second brain because it relies on neurons and neurotransmitters similarly to the brain to function, and it has a vast amount of nervous system connections in the gut. In fact, most of our serotonin, this neurotransmitter that most people talk about for brain health and mood, by the way, if you missed my video on serotonin and brain, make sure you check that out. This also serves to help with gastrointestinal muscle contractions, or what was known as peristalsis, the wave-like contractions that move food through your digestive tract. In addition, there's other signaling molecules that are made in the GI tract that also play a role in digestion and regulating our physiology, not just in the gut, but it communicates with the brain in the central nervous system. And this is known as a gut-brain connection. Now, the gut's influence on the brain and the body is interplayed in several different ways. We have the immune response, which our gut houses about 70% of our immune system. So our immune response is coordinated by the gut, and then, coordinated with the gut and the brain together. Tryptophan metabolism. Now, this is a very important signaling molecule, okay? It is a precursor of, obviously, to serotonin and melatonin, but it also modulates inflammation. So tryptophan can be kind of escaped if there's a lot of inflammation going on in the body, and used as a precursor to fuel the inflammation, which our body needs some inflammation in acute situations, right? And this can also cause some of the mood effects or neuroinflammation because of this connection from the gut to the brain. Now, the vagus nerve is another connection in this gut-brain superhighway, and it literally extends from the brain to the GI tract, and it transports communication through signaling information back and forth. The vagus nerve is critical in mood, inflammation, digestion, and other vital bodily processes. There are a lot of things people do to calm the vagus nerve. This is where you get the breathing, the gargling, all of that, because people are trying to calm this parasympathetic nervous response, and that can help the mood, it can help inflammation, and it can help the gut. And then there's metabolites of microbes. So our gut microbes actually produce these little critters that are living in our gut, which I'll get to in a minute. They actually produce metabolites that communicate through this gut-brain connection. Things such as short-chain fatty acids, branched-chain amino acids, and other signaling molecules are produced by the gut, and these impact things such as immune function, digestive health, and other, again, bodily processes and physiology. And then, of course, the whole enteric nervous system, right? The actual nervous system within the gut itself communicates to the brain. And this is the second brain influence that was discussed. So you can see these tight connections. So what happens now when there's a lot of stress on the gut? Well, it has short and long-term effects. It can modify this communication between the gut and the brain that we just went over. And this influences our rest and digest process. Now, as a result, when you're stressed, your digestive processes and your function does not feel right? There's discomfort. Maybe even it gets exacerbated more if it's a chronic issue when you're stressed. It's this perpetual cycle. Now, gut issues can cause the stress too. So again, we have this vicious bidirectional course. So it's really important, again, guys, I'm going to say this again, it's really important to understand the stress mind-body connection, because you can do all of the physical things right, and even take the right medications and all that. And if you're stressed out, it's important to understand that your gut might still feel off. And on the flip side of that, if you can't figure out why you're stressed out, you might want to look at your gut. Okay, now stress has the following impacts on gut. It affects gut motility. So you can have slower or faster gut motility. So you're going to the bathroom more, going less, your stomach's moving, or your gut's moving more or less, food's staying there or not staying there as long as you want it to. You can get an increase in pain sensation in the gut. And this is related to inflammatory mediators and neurotransmitters that are produced as a result of stress. We'll get to that a little later too. It alters intestinal secretion, so you don't digest and absorb as well. It influences gut permeability. Again, something else, stay tuned for, because we're going to get to that in a minute. It negatively affects GI mucosa regulation and blood flow, so you're getting less circulation to the gut. And it shifts those critical microbiota that are what are producing the metabolites and related to the functioning of our body physiology. Now, stress has actually been linked to many gastrointestinal disorders. Just to give you an example, inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, functional gastrointestinal diseases besides irritable bowel syndrome, food antigen-related adverse responses, which we can think of as allergies or food sensitivities, peptic ulcer, and gastrointestinal reflux disease, aka GERD, have all been linked to stress. Now, interestingly, if we look at stress signals, they can alter the gut's immune response as well. Now, here we talk about the gut stress axis. So the stress signals are released from the central nervous system from the brain, and they activate the parasympathetic nerves, and which innervate these enteric nervous neurons that shift gut function that I talked about just now. So that's how this stress interaction occurs. And I want to highlight here kind of the immune response that can happen when this signal cross reacts, right, with the brain and the gut. I don't know if cross reacts is the correct word, but you get my drift. So it's believed that this cortical releasing hormone, or the CRF, which is the first phase of the signal for the stress response from the brain, that actually has these neural connections to nerve cells in the gut, to mast cells, and to gut cells in general. So again, the stress response is actually, as soon as we get stressed, the stress signal goes straight to the gut, and that can lead to inflammation and impact gut motility. Okay, so those are the two main things, and the secretion of our gut, right? So when our body's stressed out, the last thing it wants to do is digest. It needs to get up and run, right? So that's why when you're stressed, you could be constipated, or you could be going to the bathroom more. Now, there's these mast cells, which are these type of immune cells that interplay with this gut stress axis. And those are initiated by the stress signals. This is one example. So these mast cells actually release a range of neurotransmitters and pro-inflammatory cytokines or messengers in response to the stress signal. And these chemicals actually interact with this gastrointestinal physiology, and then you have more pain and more immune deregulation. Okay, so I'm going to back up here a little bit, just so that you know what we've kind of gone over. So we talked about this connection in the nervous system in the second brain, right? The PNS, the ANS, and the SNS, but the autonomic nervous system is made up of those two divisions, right? The sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Those interact with a third, which is the enteric nervous system in the gut. Now, this gut, our gut and our body interact with our brain in various different ways. Through this immune response I just went over, tryptophan, vagus nerve, as well as the metabolites of microbes and this enteric nervous system. Now, stress alters and impacts the gut in various ways, which we just discussed. And specifically, I highlighted this stress signaling and how it affects the gut's immune response and inflammation. Now let's look at how the gut is in the gut microbiome, which is the microbiota in the gut and all of its little genetics and everything that it entails that reside in the gut. And there's 10 to the 14 zero cells of different species of microbiota in the gut. So there's a lot of critters in there which influence our physical and emotional health in many ways. So with just in general, what the gut microbiome does is it synthesizes, assimilates, and absorbs nutrients. It metabolizes and excretes toxins and waste. It houses over 70% of the immune cells. It produces 90% of our serotonin and other vital neurochemicals that they help regulate hormonal excretion, specifically estrogen. They communicate with our brain, again, to supervise many bodily processes. This is through the gut-brain axis, and even our skin. There is a gut-skin axis. Now, stress on the gut can shift these microbiota, contributing to, again, pain, sensations, and immune modulation. There was an article in 2011 which actually went through all of the cool biochemistry. So if you're interested in that, make sure, again, you click on the article in the video description. It'll have that reference for you. But for example, norepinephrine, which is a stress signal, increases the virulence, which is the pathogen of a bacteria like E. coli or C. guangini. Now, you don't need to understand what that means, but basically it makes the critters that are in our gut more pathogenic, and that could lead to more illness. Interestingly, gut microbiota can modulate the sensation of pain, obviously, and alter our gut function. And probiotics may inhibit this hypersensitivity and even intestinal permeability that we're going to talk to next. So there's your first kind of hidden tip there about probiotics. Now, stress can cause leaky gut. So what is leaky gut? It's actually a pretty defamed term because naturopaths have been using that term for years to describe what is the correct term. People get very phosphorylated over using correct terminology in the sphere of medicine. Even if it makes it easier for the consumer to understand what we're talking about, we need to be proper. There's a little sarcasm there. No, I guess it's important to understand the true meaning of the word. So in a healthy gut, the inner lining of the intestine wall is an intact barrier that filters through helpful chemicals, and it prevents potentially dangerous things from entering our gut and into our body, right? We don't want things like undigested food, toxins, bacteria, or viruses to enter into the bloodstream and go systematic. So our gut is like, this is where the immune response happens, right? Everything that is taken into our body goes through these filters. And that makes this intestinal barrier one of the major players in our immune response. So we want it to stay nice and strong. And it helps us keep this immune tolerant. So we know friend or foe, and our immune system is behaving and our gut is happy. Now it has 3 layers to do this job properly. It has an external mucus layer. It has a middle intercellular junction, which support like this brush border of the intestinal barrier and regulates the transport in between cells. There's this cute little like hairy little brush border and in our gut. And then the outer gut vascular barrier is the final defensive shield. It's termed the GVB, and it regulates the release of the micro metabolites to portal circulation through the liver, right? So we can detoxify and have toxins go through the liver too. So see our guts interacting with everything. Now, breakdown in this intestinal barrier can occur in any one of these 3 places. And when that breakdown occurs, it's termed intestinal permeability. The intestine has gotten too permeable to different things, and what's good might not be staying in the body, and what's bad might be coming into the body. That is known as quote unquote leaky gut. Now, there's different causes of leaky gut, and they're fueled by various stressors. So here we have stressors again. What kind of stressors? Certain medications, emotional stress, excessive exercise, right? Too much of a good thing that can cause problems in the intestinal lining, non-nourishing lifestyle habits, toxic exposures, inflammatory dietary compounds. This is very individualized, what impacts your gut and somebody else, as you probably have been aware just through experience in life. Alcohol can cause intestinal permeability, infections, and food sensitivities. A lot of times food sensitivities I found are related to intestinal permeability, as well as specific enzyme degeneration from this intestinal barrier breakdown. So leaky gut is a symptom and it isn't a diagnosis, but intestinal permeability is currently gaining more attention in research and its clinical applications because of the way that it's linked to various associations to different diseases, including inflammatory health conditions, things like celiac disease, Crohn's disease, autoimmune disorders, neurological disorders, and mood disorders. In fact, many people in functional medicine and naturopathic medicine feel that an intestinal permeability is one of the key factors to fueling autoimmunity, along with environmental trigger and a genetic predisposition. Now, we went through a lot of what happens with a stressed out gut, okay? So we realize now that our emotions impact our whole physiology, not just our brain and our mood. Stress has system-wide effects, especially on the gut. And this includes its immune response, its microbiome, and the defensive intestinal lining layer. And on the flip side, digestive disturbance can perpetuate stress symptoms. So again, if you're stressed out, it's important to understand how these 2 interact and could be impacting your symptoms. Now, we've already learned how probiotics and some of the things that I've listed as far as leaky gut, if you don't do those things and you do the opposite, you see if there's things like medication, too much emotional stress, non-nourishing lifestyle habits, making sure you're eating a diet that fits good and feels good for you, that's nourishing. If you do some of these things, you're going to have less intestinal permeability, and that's going to help your gut too. So those are the two little tips, but I'm going to go more into tips next time in the next video and article, because this video is kind of already long. And I want you to understand that, take those two tips with you, because many people are already taking probiotics and now you know why. Make sure you're doing a really good quality one that you and your doctor or integrative health practitioner have picked out, and you know it's optimized for your specific digestion, so that you know what's best for you and you can get the best benefits. And also doing some of those lifestyle things that many people are touting, but really are powerful. And you can see why based on what I just discussed. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. I hope that if you've been struggling with digestive issues and you can't figure out why, and you feel like you're doing everything right, this will give you a new perspective. Please make sure you check out the video description for additional resources, references, and to the article if you want to check out the references I discussed in this video. Okay, so I thank you for joining me. I thank you for your interest in this topic. Please share it and like this video so more people can become empowered with this health information. And please subscribe, because I'm going to have more courses and resources and different videos coming out, at least, monthly, if not weekly. And I don't want you to miss it, because I think this information can be very helpful. All right, take care. Have a wonderful day, and I will speak to you very soon. Take care.